Welcome to this video. Thanks so much for tuning in to the weekly Wednesday card reading. And I'm just going to share the cards that I pulled and give a little intuitive insight as to what they mean as far as the energies go for the week. And I love to use these cards because they have a little bit of everything. And this will be from Wednesday to Wednesday approximately. So it's always fun when I use these cards. By the way, thank you so much for tuning in. And my intention is the highest levels of love, light, and unity consciousness. This is the two cards that I pulled. I did a 4-card spread. And the reason that I did is because the third card that I pulled for the end of the week happened to be conflict and Mars. So I was like, I can't just leave it at conflict and Mars. I got to see why are we having conflict? Is what's going on with Mars? And so the next card that I pulled in relationship to conflict, which is leading into, we're starting to see, it's kind of a double meaning, and I'll get to that in a moment, was Pluto and transformation. So as I've mentioned before, astrology is not my major. And I am always pleasantly surprised when I pull these cards and it's in alignment with something going on that's big astrologically. Last week, if you watched this channel, you'll remember I pulled the Capricorn card, and ironically, we had a full moon in Capricorn. And Capricorn is big right now. Apparently, there's something going on with Pluto in Capricorn, or coming up with Pluto in Capricorn. So we'll go into that in just a little bit. The cards that I pulled essentially overall were conflict and transformation heading in towards the end of the week, but I see this as ongoing, by the way. And the overall picture was show compassion and stay in the moment. Earthstar Chakra, stay in the moment, connect with earth, feet on the ground, and higher heart. So that was another card that I pulled from last week's spread. So it's ongoing. We need to stay in the heart, whatever it is we're experiencing. So let me break this down a little bit. Essentially, I was shown, well, Mars is in Leo, apparently, until next week. Who'd have thought? I think it's July 10th or so, Mars comes out of Leo. Now, I don't know much about that, but what I do know is it's fire. So we have a lot of fire action, right? And kind of drama, a flair for the drama. Leo, that would be some of the fiery stuff associated with Leo from what I've read. And what I'm seeing, though, is a lot of, yes, we're seeing conflict outside. Yes, there's a lot going on. And it has to do with us moving from one era into another. From my perspective, we're moving out of the old, we're moving into the new. And I told some of my friends this week, I felt like Stretch Armstrong. I felt like I was being pulled in 2 different directions energetically. And I was just maintaining as much as I could my own centeredness, and not to get, if you think of Stretch Armstrong, there's this idea that if we let go, if I let go right now, I'm going to get catapulted into that future. And there's certain things I need to integrate before that. And that was kind of the messages that I was seeing come through. So some of us are feeling this discomfort, this inner conflict, not only with what we're seeing going on outside, but what we're feeling inside. And when I looked up transformation in Pluto, which I can look up the meaning in the book, but what's interesting is, so Mars is calling for action, right? But simultaneously, oops, I lost it. Let me just pause for a second. So I am on yogajournal.com, so it's kind of a fun, I just liked this article. I found it really helpful. And it talks about retrograde, so you guys might want to check that out. The question I asked was Pluto. There's something what's going on with Pluto? Well, it turns out Pluto is in retrograde from May 1st to October 11th of this year. And so it's in retrograde until then, which I still don't quite understand, because apparently it's also in Capricorn, or potentially retrograde in Capricorn. But here's what I get from that intuitively, just to share. I see this as being a very transformational time, and many of us are feeling conflicted about where we're going. What does it look like? We're in between two worlds. We're being stretched. We've got 1 foot in the old, 1 foot in the new. When I looked at this, this description of it, I found it very fascinating because it specifically says the moment in which we currently find ourselves straddling two worlds, the old and the new. It says Pluto in Capricorn is the old or the existing, and Pluto in Aquarius is the new or the future. And therefore, we took, because I guess it went from Aquarius back to Capricorn, back to Aquarius, back to Capricorn, or something like that. Essentially, it talks about dancing deep with change. And this retrograde is an integral part of the dance. And it talks about Pluto bringing up shadow. And when I looked it up in the book, which I thought was really interesting as well, it really talks about it bringing up deeply hidden emotional and psychological blocks that need to be brought to light for transformation. It will assist in removing the old, making room for the new. So obviously this is a theme. And it basically is saying if this transformation is ignored, it's going to cause imbalances. And in essence, it's going to cause conflict. So we might be feeling this internal conflict of we're at that in-between stage. We're not quite the butterfly, but we're not the caterpillar either. In some cases, we are the butterfly, but we're not necessarily able to take action yet for whatever reason. In other cases, we're still the caterpillar and we want to take action and we're feeling that fight, but we have to bring up the shadow and deal with that before we can transform into the butterfly. And otherwise, if we let go of the old and we haven't transformed, we're going to get slingshot as a caterpillar into this new space and we're not going to know what to do. We're going to be taking all of that baggage, all of that old stuff with us, and it's going to be potentially even messier. So this is giving us an opportunity from my perspective to really go within. And that's what the retrograde, right, from one perspective is about. We want to take action. We're being called to take action. But sometimes taking action means recognizing that we need to take a breath. And this comes back to the other cards, stay in the moment. We're going to recognize when it's good to take action and when it's time to take a step back. If we stay in the moment, we connect with the earth, we get grounded. And also, if we do take those steps forward and they weren't the right time, and we realize I just took 2 steps forward, but now I'm going backwards again, we're really being called to show compassion yet again and go through the higher heart. So this is in reference to the cycles that we're going through. The card that I pulled in reference to transformation in Pluto was the medicine wheel, cycles and movement. So this is part of it. We're being called to move. We're being called to take action. But we must learn about ourselves, recognize the conflict within, potentially go into our higher heart before we take those steps forward. So it's really a process. We need to make sure, where are we on the medicine wheel before we just jump off that wheel and don't allow ourselves the opportunity to truly unfold. The other message that was coming through about this was wisdom and gratitude. Stay in the moment and have wisdom and gratitude for wherever it is that we are at. If we're feeling conflict, we might be resisting change. If we're wanting to take action before we do the inner work, that can create conflict. So all of these things are kind of coming up. Pluto represents that shadow, right? So we're pulling up the shadow, we're digging it all up. The other message that came through about this is we can be in resistance to that shadow, which then causes conflict and creates the emotional disruption. However, because we've ignored it, maybe we've been in denial. Oh, I don't need to do that. I am sunshine and rainbows. And then all of a sudden we feel yucky. We feel out of balance and we're not sure what's going on. And it keeps coming up and it keeps coming up and we keep pushing it down. Well, this is giving us plenty of time planetarily to allow us to move on that medicine wheel, to recognize cycles and movement. Recognize when it's time to move by being present and staying in the heart, and recognizing when it's time to stand still and be strong in our decision of knowingness that now is not the time. And when I say that, now is the time, but that doesn't mean this second. It could be that today is not the day, maybe tomorrow is. And so sometimes we get out of balance because we're all excited and we want to make these changes, and we can see that, but we can't see what we're taking with us, what we're dragging behind us, what's slowing us down, what's blocking us, until we take that time to do that inner work. Also, the thing that I'm seeing here is a lot going on here with hands and feet. So the Earthstar, ankles, feet, grounded, let that energy connect. It's the energy of our ancestors. Some of this had to do with us clearing out ancestral stuff. So when we're working with this Pluto energy, and again, I'm just saying in general with shadow, okay, sometimes what I'm seeing is we've really got to show ourselves compassion. We might be in it. Our neighbor might be working with some massive shadow that they didn't even realize they had. And so people are going to be aggressive, conflict. They're going to be angry. There's going to be stuff that comes up. And so the more we can go into our heart, show compassion, be in the moment, the less reactionary, the less we will react. And that reaction, which is action, can sometimes pull us off track. And when we do react, which I had this opportunity this week, I'll get to that in a moment, we might then recognize, oh, I'm angry right now. I just reacted, and guess what? Now that's my shadow. So in that moment, sometimes those moments of conflict are actually opportunity to give us to see transformation. So I was able to see through some conflict I went through and be grateful. I pulled North Shield and gratitude. I had to be grateful, say, wow, I am so grateful for this opportunity to see myself, because I just realized I was playing the victim and I was being reactive to somebody else who was really going through some shadow work, going through some conflict. And I didn't necessarily stay true to me in that moment. So I wasn't in the moment. I was someplace else. If I would have been in the moment, I wouldn't have reacted. However, I also wouldn't have had that opportunity to go back and look and say, hey, I really didn't respond too well to that situation. Thank you, White Buffalo. Thank you, North Shield. I'm in wisdom and gratitude. Thank you for teaching me that. And thank you, other person, for being a teacher in that moment. Also, had I have been in the moment, I would have recognized my own inner wisdom. That would have come up. I wouldn't have been in conflict. I wouldn't have not known what to say. I would have been present, and what I needed to say would have just come through naturally, because that's what happens when we channel those emotions through the higher heart. And when we're in the higher heart, we're able to communicate better. We're able to share in that experience in a much more positive way, and that allows for a more graceful transformation with less conflict, Mars. So the other message that I got from this, it also has to do with, yes, we're doing shadow work. Yes, it's this deep, dark, potential time, but it doesn't have to be. There are some people that are still caught up, and I was talking about the Stretch Armstrong being pulled in both directions and just trying to find my center and my stability. Some people don't want to give up the shadow. That's what they're good at. They're used to doing shadow work. They're used to working in the dark depths and dealing with these feelings and emotions. However, that can also keep us from transforming into a butterfly, because we still feel like we have to be down here and we don't have all the answers, and we're working through our ancestral lineage, karma, or whatever that is. And while that may be true, and this has to do with us really paying attention to what is true to us, while that may be true, or while that may have been true in an old energy, is it still true? Did we maybe already work through that? Do we need to rehash it and work through it again? Maybe, but maybe we don't. And so this comes back to us recognizing, are we having conflict because we've already made a transformation, but we're not acknowledging and being grateful? We're not acknowledging. The other card that came through was counting Coup, victory. We haven't acknowledged the victories in order to recognize how far we've come. So we just keep playing with that shadow because it's easier for us to do that, or it feels easier because we're more familiar with it. On the other end of the spectrum, we may have been avoiding the shadow. We might have been trying to jump on the other part of the medicine wheel before going in all of the directions. We might not have actually taken the time to stop and given gratitude for the experiences that we've had, and in that moment recognizing there is some shadow that still is there that isn't quite resolved, or family lineage things that maybe we did come here to clear, and we've been avoiding that. And that might be the conflict that we're feeling. I don't want to look at that. Nope, that's not mine. But in reality, it could be. So these are all things we're being invited to ask ourselves by going within before we take action, even though we're being really pushed with this fiery sign to take action, because that's what Mars kind of represents. Be assertive, fire, but, right, we still need to be present before we take that action. Otherwise, we may not be coming from the higher heart. And that higher heart, if you remember the card reading from last week, is how we communicate with love. We communicate in a softer way, and we can use our inner wisdom to do that if we're staying present and in the moment. So, it's a lot, potentially. It could be very great for some people. For other people that are listening to this, you might be going, oh my goodness, I've totally been feeling this conflict energy. I feel that this transformation is happening, but I don't know where that's going. I don't know what it looks like. And again, the message is stay in the moment. It's okay. And the more we can do that, the more the answers will come. Also recognizing when we are receiving wisdom, when we are receiving that information, when we are having that knowingness, that allows us to dissolve the conflict, even though we recognize that it might be there. And this comes back to what I've said before, which is acknowledge where we're at, recognize what we're feeling. That allows us to see it. And in that moment, it shifts the energy. If we're ignoring it, or we're staying too focused on it, and we're ignoring other things, that's going to continue to create more conflict, and it's going to not allow us to alchemize fire and transform and be in the place with the most grace in which we can feel things unfolding naturally. So it might feel a little sticky, it might feel a little crunchy, it may feel a little fiery, and this is here for our transformation. It is part of the cycle and movement. And I don't know if I said this or not, but are we moving too quickly? Are we moving too slowly? The Mars energy helps us push through, right? From my understanding, get us to move, get us to take action. So some people are not willing to take action, and this is only creating more conflict. And this is where we're being called to show more compassion, because we might be that person. We may be looking at something in our lives going, I don't want to give that up. I'm not ready to move into this next stage. And that may be true. We're being called to ask ourselves, what is our truth? So are we done working with this? Can we let that go and move on to the next thing? And we'll know when we're done by being present and in the moment and grounding that energy. So hopefully someone found this helpful. And in the meantime, take some deep breaths, get outside, get connected with the Earthstar Chakra. Should I read a little bit about the Earthstar Chakra? I don't know. I think the higher heart is really important. So stay in the moment. Let's stick with that just for a second because it could be fun. I didn't really read about these a lot, but Talks about life energy, transmutation, foot, leg, feeling spacey, paranoid. Oh, this is important. That's why I picked it up. So signs of imbalances in the Earthstar Chakra include foot, ankle, and leg problems, feeling spacey, paranoid, panic attacks, and denial. Ooh, so now I'm seeing a little extra juice here. Why that's important right now? Because we might, if we're in denial, conflict, we don't want change, we don't have to work on anything, we've already done the work, even though we might still have some things we forgot about, and we're just in our heads about it. This can create feelings of panic. Why am I not feeling like, what is this? Be present, get grounded, go into the higher heart, show compassion for ourselves, right? Oh, that's the other, thank goodness for the little victories. So saying, thank you for showing me this. By us acknowledging that we're having a panic attack and that maybe we need to get grounded, that in itself is a little victory. Because if we ignored it and it kept getting worse and worse, and then we ended up with a heart issue or some type of disorder because we've been ignoring or been in denial about us feeling out of balance. You see where I'm going with this? So it's all connected. And essentially get centered in the moment, stop dwelling in the past or fearing the future, which is huge with this transformation, you guys. It feels like we are literally in between worlds because we are. And so this can create denial. It can create panic attacks. We can feel paranoid. And that all comes from us. It comes from a lot of reasons, but doing the work. The work means stop, acknowledge, integrate, process, and then take action. Or we've done all that. For real, it's time to move on. Acknowledge the victories that we've had. Acknowledge how far we've come. Acknowledge some of the past victories. And I'm really being called to talk about that for a moment because I'm going to use my life as an example. I had a difficult childhood, okay? Sometimes when I get really discouraged and I feel like I don't have any victories right now, everything is, I'm in Eeyore mode. I get like that sometimes, guys. It's just part of being a human, I think. I will take a moment and look back on my childhood and go, wow, not so bad now, right? Like, yeah, I've got stuff going on, but what I experienced when I was a kid was way worse. And I'm sharing that because that's a victory. That's like a big deal to be able to say, wow, look how far I've come. Look how did I manage to be normal? Not that you would consider what I do normal. But you know where I'm going with this. So it's important. There are other people out there listening to us or listening to this show who have been through some stuff. And it might feel like you're going through some stuff right now, but you've been through worse stuff before. Or maybe you're in it right now, and sometimes looking at somebody else and what they can teach us is just as valuable. I look at some of the other people that are going through some things. I'm like, my life is not bad at all, right? I can easily get through this. But when we're in it, when we're going through that conflict within ourselves, it's difficult to see past it. It's difficult to feel past the shadow because it seems so big and looming and overwhelming. But again, one step at a time. Go into the heart, get grounded, give gratitude. It might be time, and this is part of the North Shield, it might be time to teach someone else. It might be time to receive also. That was another message that came through, was sometimes having a victory, we might actually have had this victory, but we're not willing to acknowledge it. So we have to be willing to acknowledge how far we've come. Maybe you had a bad marriage. Maybe you had troubled childhood. Maybe you had children who have had difficulties, and somehow you've gotten to this place now. So that's important to acknowledge that. And also recognizing that in other people's lives, because maybe they need to hear it. Wow, I think that what you're doing is incredible. Look how far you've come. Wow, look how great you look. And if they're in a really bad place, words of encouragement and acknowledging, showing compassion, recognizing that we've all been there. but this is all part of this transformation. And whew, are we having fun yet? In love and light, guys, thank you so much. Namaste.